Day 1, they were normal college students. Day 6, they had to be stopped before someone got seriously hurt. No one became a monster. They were just given a uniform.
Every day, you make decisions. What to buy, who to trust, what to believe. But here's the real question. Are those decisions really yours? Or are they designed? This channel breaks down the psychology behind everything. I'm Shrest, and this is where we decode the world.
August 1971, Stanford University, California, one of the most prestigious universities in the world. Philip Zimbardo, a psychology professor, wanted to answer a simple question: does a prison turn people cruel, or do cruel people end up in prison? To find out, he built a prison in a basement and filled it with normal, healthy college students. What happened in the next 6 days would change psychology forever and raise a question that nobody wanted to answer. Are any of us really good people, or are we all just waiting for the right situation to bring out the worst in us? Philip Zimbardo was not a villain. He was a respected professor at Stanford University. In 1971, he had one serious research question. He wanted to know if the brutality inside real American prisons was caused by the type of people who became guards or by the environment of the prison itself. To study this, he placed an advertisement in the Palo Alto Times newspaper. It read, "Male college students needed for a psychological study of prison life. $15 per day for 1 to 2 weeks. 75 men applied. Zimbardo and his team screened every single one. Psychological interviews, personality tests. They deliberately excluded anyone with a criminal background, any history of mental illness, or any sign of aggression. Only the most stable, healthy, normal young men were chosen. 24 men were selected. By random coin flip, nothing more. 12 became prisoners. 12 became guards. The guards were given khaki uniforms, reflective sunglasses to prevent eye contact with prisoners, and wooden batons. They were told one thing: maintain order. They were not told how. The prisoners were given smocks with ID numbers on them. No names, only numbers. A chain was padlocked around one ankle. Their heads were covered with nylon stockings. Zimbardo said this was to simulate what it feels like to have your head shaved on the first day of prison, to strip away your identity. And then, to make it absolutely real, the prisoners were not just told to show up at the basement. They were arrested by actual police officers at their homes without warning. Day 1. At 2:30 in the morning, the guards blasted their whistles and woke the prisoners for a count. The prisoners had to stand at their cell doors and repeat their ID numbers, not their names, their numbers. Ambient. Prisoners reciting faintly, 8612, 819. At first, nobody took it seriously. The guards felt awkward in their uniforms. The prisoners thought it was almost amusing, a game they would play for 2 weeks and collect their money. Day 2. Everything changed. The prisoners decided to fight back. They locked themselves in their cells, ripped off their ID number tags, and shouted insults at the guards. Ambient. Prisoners shouting, tags tearing. The guards responded by using fire extinguishers to blast the prisoners with freezing carbon dioxide, forcing them away from the doors. They then stripped the prisoners naked, confiscated their mattresses, and put the ringleaders in solitary confinement, a tiny closet they called the Hole. Something had shifted. The guards had stopped feeling like students playing a role. They had started to feel like guards. Day 3. Less than 36 hours into the experiment, prisoner number 8612 had a breakdown. He began crying uncontrollably, screaming in rage, showing what appeared to be symptoms of a severe emotional collapse. Ambient prisoner screams and sobs. Zimbardo initially thought he was faking to get out. He was released early, but the moment he left the building, he found himself in a genuine psychological state of confusion, unsure what was real and what was the experiment. Days 4 and 5 brought a slow, terrifying deterioration. Guards invented new punishments. They forced prisoners to clean toilets with their bare hands. They deprived them of sleep with nighttime counts every 2 hours. They made them do pointless exercises, not for fitness, but for humiliation. Zimbardo watched all of this from his role as prison superintendent, and here is the most disturbing fact: he did not stop it. He had become so absorbed in his role as warden that he stopped thinking like a scientist and started thinking like a prison administrator. By day 5, 4 more prisoners had been released due to extreme emotional distress. One had developed a full psychosomatic rash across his body, his skin reacting to stress that had no physical source. Over 50 people had visited or observed the experiment by day 5. Other researchers, staff, even a prison chaplain. Not one of them had formally objected to what they were seeing. Not one had said, "Stop this." Then Christina Maslach arrived. She was a recent PhD graduate from Stanford. She was also Philip Zimbardo's girlfriend. He invited her to come and observe his groundbreaking research. What she saw made her physically sick. Guards were marching prisoners down the corridor with paper bags over their heads. Prisoners were crying. The air of the entire basement had become one of real fear and real cruelty. Out of more than 50 people who had observed the experiment, she was the only one who looked at it and said, "This is wrong."
That night, she confronted Zimbardo. She told him, "What you are doing to those boys is terrible." She cried, they fought, and she forced him to look at what he had become. Not a scientist studying a prison, but a warden running one.
The next morning, Zimbardo ended the experiment. Day 6, 8 days before it was supposed to finish. When the experiment ended, Zimbardo spent years trying to understand what had happened. His conclusion became known as the Lucifer effect, published in a full book in 2007. The core idea is this: evil is not a personality trait. Evil is a situation. Given the right circumstances, the right uniform, the right authority structure, the right environment, almost any person can be made to act in ways they would otherwise consider unthinkable. This happens through a process called de-individuation, when a person loses their sense of individual identity and instead takes on the identity of a role or a group. The uniform was not just clothing, it was permission. There is also an important critical note. In later years, researchers discovered that Zimbardo gave the guards instructions before the experiment, telling them how to create a psychologically hostile environment. Some critics argue this means the guards were not acting purely from situational pressure. They were coached. This is an ongoing debate in psychology. But here is what is not debated. The prisoners who broke down were not faking initially. The distress was real. The situation had real psychological power. Real human beings, randomly assigned a label, experienced genuine suffering. In 2004, photographs emerged from Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. American soldiers, not criminals, not specially selected sadists, were photographed humiliating and abusing Iraqi prisoners. Philip Zimbardo testified as an expert witness in the court-martial of one of the soldiers. His argument, the same forces that transformed Stanford students into abusers in 1971, had transformed these soldiers. The uniform, the authority structure, the dehumanization of the prisoner, the absence of oversight. You do not need a prison or a war to see this. Think about office culture, how a person who was kind and thoughtful in their personal life becomes a different person the moment they get a management title and a performance target to hit. Think about social media, where people say things in comments that they would never say to someone's face. The screen is a kind of uniform. The anonymity removes identity, and de-individuation does the rest. Zimbardo wrote in 2007, "Any deed that any human has ever done, however horrible, is possible for any of us to do, under the right situational circumstances." Christina Maslach, the woman who stopped the experiment, later became one of the world's leading researchers on workplace burnout. She married Zimbardo in 1972. She said the Stanford Prison Experiment never left her. It shaped everything she studied for the next 50 years. The real lesson of the Stanford Prison Experiment is not that we are all secretly monsters. The real lesson is that identity is more fragile than we think, and that the most important thing you can do is know who you are before someone hands you a uniform. If this made you think about power, identity, and how situations shape who we are, subscribe. Next week, we examine how advertising companies hired psychologists to design ads that your brain literally cannot resist. The psychology of advertising.